Welcome, YouTube viewers. Today I'm thrilled to take you through the process of restoring the legendary Studer A820 2-inch multi-track tape machine. Now, while this is certainly exciting for me, I hope you'll find it as engaging as well. In this video, I'll be reinstalling the recently refurbished card cage back into the machine. A bit of departure from my usual routine of disassembly and cleaning. Today feels more like a ground-up rebuild. As I've mentioned in previous videos, one of the aspects I appreciate about working on the Studer is the simplicity of its hardware. Most of the screws are either 3mm or 4mm metric hex heads. So you only need two tools, a 2.5mm and a 3.0mm hex wrench. That said, you'll see there are some tricky wiring paths to manage. Since it's been some time since I've removed the card cage, I had to revisit earlier footage to make sure everything goes back in its rightful place. Getting the card cage seated properly was no small feat. I had to install and remove it several times because I missed a detail here or there. On top of that, reconnecting over 32 connectors in the right positions with very tight clearance for the wire looms proved to be quite the challenge. Without a doubt, removing the card cage to replace those capacitors has been the most demanding part of this entire restoration. So, without further ado, let's jump in and get this card cage properly installed in that machine. So this is pretty tricky. I'm going to make a few mistakes. What I'm pointing to is there's a little stud there on either side, and you see how that opening fits in there. So this card cage will fit around that opening. However, I'm going to make a mistake here. This is how you got to get it in, but see there, the hour meter and that little circuit board that runs the hour meter are still in. That's going to that's going to cause a problem where I can't wedge this up high enough to get it into the proper place. So here's how the circuit board goes on. Again, I'm going to make another mistake because the circuit board needs to be connected to the other circuit board, and this is not easy to doing this here. I'm trying to figure out a way that I'm going to get behind it and make those screws, because the screws on the top and bottom, and it's just not an easy thing to do. So I've kind of gone, I'm sort of measuring it, trying to figure out how to get these screws in. They fit on it. They'll see those standoffs on the top, and at the bottom they're not standoffs. And the other problem that occurs with this is that because this is sort of sheet metal, the way this card cage is made out of, there's some flex. And the flex will cause the screws from the top to bottom to not align perfectly. Now, if this was sitting on your bench and you were screwing this together, it would be a different story. And, you know, in hindsight, the answer would be to unsolder those power wires that are running there so that you could put these two boards together on the bench, because you could still get it into there. I believe there's still enough room to kind of flip it, but in any case, you can do this. It's just not easy. As I found out that that X wrench that I'm using right now is a little too long. It's just getting in the way. So I actually had to come out and use a smaller hex wrench to get down in there. And if you had a right angle one, or a small bit or something on a ratchet, that would work a lot better than this did. But in any case, I first tried doing it like this, and it didn't work. Here I am again. I took it off because the screws just didn't seem to fit right, and I'm going to try it again. I still haven't learned my lesson here on this. I'm going to try to force it in there and see what happens this time, and see if I can get those screws in. They just, you'll see I'll thread it by hand, if I get it lined up right, I can actually thread it by hand. And so it's the problem is like I said, that one that I'm doing is the top screw. The bottom screw is way down there, and it's pretty difficult to get to. It's gonna chew the heck of my hand out trying to do these things, or screw my arm. My arm's gonna get really scratched quite a bit getting these in here. So you see, I'm trying. But the funny thing is, these came out again. I had to take these out because this plugging that other board into this board would be almost impossible once it was in the unit. So the two boards had to be plugged together before you can do anything. And I learned that in a second here, what was going on. So here we go. Now I've realized that. Now I'm plugging the right-hand board into the left-hand board before I screw them together. Okay, this is going to work out much better, that I could actually screw that together now. And it's hard to see it with my hand on top of it, but if you look over on the left-hand side, I've removed that hour meter. Because at this point, I've realized the only way to get this thing in here is to kind of do it an angle deal, where you kind of wedge it in, and the hour meter's in the way and stops it from doing that. So, believe me, this was a lot of trial and error in here to get these various pieces in. And so, mounting this, there's like 10 screws on each card. 5 on top, 5 on the bottom, and let me tell you, those bottom screws are not fun to get to. But I think I got it coming up. We'll see this in there. But yeah, now at least I got the two cards plugged together, because you're never going to get into that plug. It's sitting back in the card cage section, and then you have these dividers, so getting back there would be like next to impossible. So the key with here is get a couple screws into the thing so I get the alignment. Don't tighten the screws, because you need to kind of move these boards up and down, because remember I said it's made out of a sheet metal, and that bottom lip is going to flex a little bit. So it's really tough to get the bottom screws to line perfectly straight in there. So you got to have some play in there. So the key is definitely do not tighten any screws until they're all screwed into the cage itself. And you could see, reaching back there, my hands just, I'm getting tough, just chewed up with the connectors, chewed up with tie wraps. There's just not a lot of room in here to do this. Now I can slide that forward a little bit, and it does make it a little easier to get my hand down there. And I believe at some point, I don't know if I'll show it, but at some point I will slide the entire card cage forward, at least up to almost to the edge of those cards. The wires are going to stop me again, but at least I can get them in there. And you see that the card cage is not in the right spot. It's in the right spot, but it has to get down. Now this is from inside the unit, and these are the bottom screws that got to go into that piece of metal that bends. So this is not easy here. And unfortunately, this wasn't easy getting a camera down in there while I was trying to do this and get a shot of this. So you're only going to see a little bit, and I just very shortly after this, I just gave up and said, you know what, I can't film this. I'm just asking for it. Yeah, I'm trying to get that thing to line up, that screw hole to line up, but that metal edge is actually so thin that it moves a little bit. And I can't see the hole. Of course, I can't see the holes. You know, I'm looking over the top at this. The camera's down inside. That's how it's seeing this. But I can't see those holes. I'm basically feeling for those holes with the screw and stuff like that. So this was just not an easy job. You can see I have a smaller hex wrench because the other one just wouldn't fit in this gap to get those bottom screws down there. So see, I got the wrench on there, trying to get it to start straight. You kind of got to move it around. It might have to go down a little bit. It might have to angle, you know, and then keep turning till you finally get it to catch. All in all, not the easiest thing to do. But once it's going like that, now I can tighten that screw in there. And again, I won't tighten it real tight, but I will tighten it enough to actually go on to the next screw and go from there. Now, remember, there's 5 screws per card at the bottom and 5 screws at the top. You're only looking at me put on 2 screws right here. You know, so there's 3 more screws on this card alone. And it's not easy. But once you get one started now, the other one comes a little easier to do. It kind of lines up better. Now this is a shot of the back of those cards. And you can see how much room I have to actually work on this. There's not a lot of room. And my hand's got to go back in there. And of course, my arm's getting kind of chewed up. So here's a shot of my arm, how badly it's getting chewed up, trying to go back there and tighten those bottom screws. Now in this shot, the card cage, the cards are mounted on the back of the cage now. And now it's just a matter of screwing the cage in. There's 3 screws on the front. And remember, the front edge goes in front of the bottom rail, and the top edge goes in back of the top rail. So you can see now I'm going to put those screws to the back. Again, being that it's tin, they're tough to line these screws up because they kind of move a little bit. You know, you got to kind of bend the card cage a little bit so you can get them. But basically, there's 3 screws on the top from the back, 3 screws in the front, on the bottom from the front. And that will screw the card cage to the frame of the machine. I think maybe you'll see me go back to that middle screw. Yeah, the other screws are out of the camera range. Sorry. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm putting in a right-hand screw, and there's 1 screw just to the left of where that latch is at, or the opening for that latch, because the latch isn't in there yet. It's been taken out. Yeah, I'm doing the right-hand side, kicking the camera stand. You know, this was not a fun job. This is probably the worst one I've did on this entire unit. There we go. Now you see me, since I have both ends in, see I could bend it up. I'm actually putting my hand under there, lifting that sheet metal up a little bit, allowing me to try to get the screw to start. That's the thing I'm telling you about that sheet metal. It is a little flexible, and this kind of stuff occurs like that. But I get the screw in, and we tighten all 3 screws. You know, we tightened all the bottom ones, we'll tighten all the top ones. And that card cage is screwed back in solid now. Now all I have to do is wire it, put all those wires back, which proved to be another issue going on because there's a lot of wires and a lot of connectors. Well, you'll see. I think I'm going to do that latch next because the latch is a whole bunch of pieces, and of course I don't remember how it is, and I don't have a diagram. But I mean, it should be self-explanatory on how it goes. But I did struggle with one part of it and took it apart a few times, as in everything else that I'm doing here. Because you put it together and then you go, oh, I got that wrong, or I forgot that, or I forgot that washer, and I forgot this piece. So, and when I did this wiring on this top of this card cage, it was like that. I mean, I'll show you a little bit further down how that happens, but right now, all I'm doing is tightening these screws. All right, now, because I'd removed it again, like the third time, it's time to put the hour meter back in. Now, another mistake I'm making here is I should have actually, while the hour meter was out, should have ran the wires that go into it and just screwed them down where I can get a screwdriver in there and do it. But I didn't do that. And you can see I'm going to mount the hour meter really nicely like it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to have a hard time getting to those screws. And we're going to leave them to last, so I'm going to have to kind of make up a little tiny screwdriver to go between there and all the ribbons that are going to go in there, because I put all the ribbons in to tighten those two screws to get power into the hour meter. So this is just the way it was mounted. There's a little bezel that holds it from behind. I'm just trying to get that bezel all in there like that. I think you're going to see, yeah, there's the little circuit card that will then screw into the hour meter. Okay, this is very easy to mount. Two screws going into studs down on the top of the card cage. So a very easy mounting for it. However, the two wires that go to the back of the hour meter are going to be the problem. But let's put the card in and worry about the wires at another time. And right here, I think you'll see me attempt to put those wires in. I actually thought this was going to be possible, but it's not. There's just the screwdriver I have way too long. Can't get the right angle because of that circuit board. It's just not going to work. So those wires are going to wind up staying there for now. Not attached. Now, and this one is the latch. Now, this latch has got so many pieces, and the first annoying piece is the spring, which is going to fall out and go down into the card cage, not the audio card cage below it, into all the dirt. Luckily, I stuck a magnet straight down in there into the dirt and successfully removed the spring. But what I was missing also is that there's a little ball on the end of the spring, and I didn't see that. See, I'm trying to get that spring to align, but I don't have the ball in there. I didn't realize that. And so there's another shot of it. There's a hole in the front, and the spring pushes against the ball fits in the hole, and that's what actually holds this whole thing in place, or makes that latch kind of fasten there. So here I'm tightening down the actual bracket there. I think I've got the screw in. I don't really remember at this point if it's in there. And then there's this whole other piece here that goes from behind, and it uses a spacer with two little screws. Now this was a source of a problem too, because once I put this together, which went together fairly easy, I noticed that the lever was against the metal, And I could swear that the lever had a lot more, like you can get your finger under it to pull it, because you pull it forward to release the top latch or the top lid. And in this case, it was so tight to there you had to get like a fingernail under it to lift it. So of course I take it out and look at it again and everything like that, but really the light didn't come on yet until I realized the problem is that when the deck is down, it pushes this latch a little bit. And so the latch then is in the position where you could actually operate it. When the deck is up and the latch is fully sprung like that, yeah, it's against the metal. So yeah, if you want to do it, you can't do it. I think I'm going to show you that here in a second. See, I'm reaching there now, but there's not enough under there to grab that. And I remember it being a lot more than that. And what I didn't think about was that the deck, when it's closed down, will make it do that. So when that came, when I saw that, then of course I took it back out and played with it and tried to figure out, is there another way this goes? But see, here we are installing it yet again because of that problem. And I'm still haven't figured out what the heck is going on here. Why is this thing so tight in there and not in the right place? But eventually, like I said, the light bulb will go off and or go on. The light bulb will turn on and I will know, yes, that thing, that's not in the normal position. All right, I'm just going to walk you through how this went back together because I couldn't get the camera in there. So the card cage itself here, okay, see this right here, this little notch is for the door. It's actually to stop on the door. And because of this, and the one on the other side obviously, you can't put the card cage straight in. Okay, it just doesn't go. But this notch, see this notch right here, there's a similar notch on the bottom of this card cage. So the card cage can be tipped at an angle, so that clears that notch, okay, and then goes in from the front and just sits there. Now it doesn't go in all the way from the front because here's what goes on is this panel here, okay, is screwed into the back of this thing. So this panel goes behind this bar. This panel down here, or this part of the card cage, goes in front of this bar. So it just doesn't slide right in. You actually have to cock it to get it in here. So the first thing and the hardest thing, and I'll show you pictures of it, videos like that, is I flip it upside down so I can clear this with the bottom, key it in, and now the card cage will be actually hanging out of the front of this unit. Okay, so it's hanging out the front. This part right here, okay, is way up against the front edge here. So it's hanging out of there. Actually, it won't come out because there's a piece back in this corner that's going to hit this little thing here. Now, the other thing is, too, you can't go from the top. You can't bring it in from the top because of this. Because of this, all of this stuff is stopping you from bringing the card cage in from the top. So the only way to do it is, like I said, is you got to go in from the front and then clear it through that hole at the bottom there, and that will get it in. Now, once it's in, it will be sticking out, and this edge is going to be up to here. Now you can screw these cards on, which is not easy because of the amount of clearance that you got between here Right now you can see it's real short. It's real hard to do, but once it's over up to the front edge, you got a lot more clearance to get your hand down in there to get the screws. And you know, the top screws aren't too bad, but the bottom screws are real difficult, even with it as far forward as you could do that. So that's how you put those cards in then. Again, you know, there's many times I took it apart and put it together because I did it wrong. You can't put the two cards in here because there's a connector that plugs unless you're trying to do this from underneath. See that connector way down in there? That's the link one card. There's one of those cards over to the other card. There it is right there. Trying to plug that in there is going to be impossible. So you pretty much got to plug them in before you put these two cards in here, okay? And that makes it a little bit easier to get. Now, one of the things that I should have done, oh, that's the other thing is, so I had the hour meter back in here, okay, and this card, and with the hour meter in there, you can't wedge this thing in correctly. It will just not go because this is stopping how far the card cage will come up. So I had to remove the hour meter for a second or third time. And one of the things that you should do that I didn't do is after that, before you're about to put, well, you got to put it in finally. So, you know, that doesn't make sense. That's right. Because you got to cock it. You got to cock this thing at a severe angle, like here, to get this in there. In other words, that card's going to be way over here. I think it's tipped like this. You got it, because, yeah, it's tipped really far back. This lip that's behind here, this lip back here, is going to be over here, okay? And so basically, because it's at an angle, that lip's going to kind of drag in there and then boom, snap in place, and then you can come and put it up like that. Now, if that's there, it's going to cause you a problem because it's in the way of doing that. So you got to put that in, and now I got the problem of I just got to get a little stubby screwdriver to get into those two screws to put that back together there. But okay, so that does all that. Then routing all these wires is something else. You know, as you can see, these wires are in there tight. They go around a little corner on the board here, which there's a rubber insulator on this board so it doesn't cut it into any ribbons. All right, and they got to go in just right. I mean, those are pretty simple because they just lay out correctly. I believe you can't see it in there now, but there's a connector that doesn't go in there. But when that goes in like that, then you got these other ones that go underneath, okay? And there's one that comes right here. This one comes around and goes underneath and plugs into the first connector here because there's another connector coming from up here. This connector goes down behind, this ribbon goes back behind the board, lays flat, and comes in and plugs in on the top connector here. So the routing of this is very, very critical to try to get this or you can't get stuff to plug in. There's also a little ribbon here, okay, and this little ribbon goes back here and plugs in behind the board back here. Okay, so that's critical on how that lies into that spot there. Another thing that I took apart and put back together again is this power harness. Okay, has a little extra wire and it's stuck underneath this connector, or this ribbon cable strap. This thing actually is you can see is on standoffs, so there's probably a ½ an inch or so below that, but that's what's going on is this wire right here comes, loops right there, underneath here, and then comes out and goes back into here. You know, is it necessary? I don't know, but that's the way they did it, and I did it the same thing when I put it back together. You know, and things like this is pretty simple because there's only standoffs on this card here in the front, so this ribbon, you can actually slide this out. It'll slide underneath this card when it's all installed. So, you know, I've labeled a few connectors so I knew which way to put them back in. But for the most part, those were pretty simple. It was really more so in here They did lay into the correct place, but it was a little difficult getting this, and this was really the hardest spot. This was like this, but these bends of all this wire right here, because there's not a lot of room here. There's a little behind here, but all of this stuff comes around the edge of this card. And like I said, there's a rubber piece there to protect them, but they all come around, and you got to get them in the right order, because if you don't, they're not going to fit in this opening back here. So that's it. Just remember that deal of this card cage. Like I said, you got to put it in like from the front and then turn it, cock it. I put the boards on, okay, when it was off, and so there was enough room to cock it with the boards on. Because if not, I think I tried to take the boards off before. It's brutal trying to get back here, especially to the screws that are way down in there. I don't know if I could show you there, but there's screws way down on the circuit card at the bottom there. And it's really tough to get to those. Tough on my hands, at least. And that's it. The card cage is all back in, and it's all wired back up, laced up with the tie wraps like it was. These are the black tie wraps, the ones I put on, and the clear ones are the ones they still had on there. So that's it. It's all back in there, and we can move on now to the next step, which is going to be down in there. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed working on it. Now that it's done, I'll be diving into the audio card drawers next, and you won't want to miss it. If you'd like to follow along, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and hit the notification bell if you want to be alerted when the next video goes live. Thanks again for watching.